And we are live. So welcome to the replay. I guess you who see this is watching the replay. While we are waiting for the audience to arrive, we would like to start with a little weather report. My name is Bente Lilja, by the way. I will be your host today. And I have two speakers with me, and we start with the weather report. So, Thomas, what's the weather like where you are?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tomáš Mildorf, and I'm the chairman of the PLANALL'S Association. I'm from the Czech Republic, but currently living in Germany, north of Germany, in Lüneburg. It's sunny, partly cloudy, I would say, in places, but fairly warm weather for October.
Okay, Thomas, thank you for that report. And then Simon, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Simon. Yes, I'm here. I am actually from Canada, but I'm based in Paris, working for Euroconsult. And I think we're just leaving summer behind. We had a few very, very warm weeks, and this week is the first hint of rain and cloud for the first time in weeks. So I think we're entering a fall shortly.
Shortly, yes. So here in Norway, where I am sitting right now, it is crisp and clear autumn day. We have sunny weather. It's still on the plus side. So the temperature is not, we are not quite ready for snow yet, but we are looking forward to that, obviously. But nice weather. So I see that we can start, and we have 2 minutes. So welcome to this webinar on Project Sustainability 101. What that means is that we are going to introduce a couple of concepts or ideas around how we can make our project results sustainable, to have a life after the project. That's the main idea that we will go through today. And we also have a couple of examples on how these ideas can be implemented. So that's the program for today. Before I start with the presentations, I would like to do some housekeeping. You have a chat box where you can ask some questions. We really encourage you to ask questions. We want to have a dialogue. I see from the people who are registered for this event that there are many with the same kind of challenges, whether or not it is a Horizon 2020 project or any other project. We want our results to be having a life after the funding stops and the project ends. So we want to engage with you to learn from your experiences, to learn what type of problems you have encountered. That would be really interesting for us to share and to have a dialogue around. So please, you can start with writing in the chat box where you're from to see how it works, to get familiar with the chat box system. And then I will keep my eye on the chat box when you ask questions there as well, so that we can I can tell that to the speaker. So please do not be shy. Tell us where you're from. Tell us your name. Tell us your project. That would be really, really nice. So we have a questions in between each of the presentation, and we will like to also have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So with that, Simon, can you introduce us to some of the concepts on sustainability, project sustainability?
Yes, absolutely. So I will share the presentation I had. Let me just do this. Here we go. Sorry.
So we will disappear, our faces will disappear, but we'll be still here, I'm sure. So we turn off our cameras so you can concentrate fully on what Simon is showing you. Okay, Simon.
Here we go. So, start at the beginning. So essentially, this webinar is designed to open the introduction, open a discussion on project sustainability. So as Bente was saying, this deals with once the project sort of lifetime, which we define as when the Commission, European Commission, or other funding source has been providing funding, has been overseeing the project, once that period is over, and there's still the desire, the requirement to continue the project, basically what then? How do you deal with this? So that's what we'll be talking about. I think especially in European Commission projects, there's been definitely, we're seeing more interest from the part of the European Commission to ensure project sustainability. So I think this is kind of an interesting topic to discuss for a lot of people who are managing or participating to these projects. So essentially, what is sustainability? In a word, sustainability is the process of maintaining change in a balanced fashion. So this is a little bit of an oxymoron, but essentially it's about thinking beyond the lifetime of the project. So what happens to the project once that initial funding period is over? And it requires a bit of not mental gymnastics, but a bit of creative thinking, just to think of what are the assets of the project, and how can these assets or developments continue on into the future. And the reason why this is a wheel is because this process is essentially a continuous repeating cycle, which needs to be repeated throughout the lifetime of the project, and not a one-time or one-off effort which is sort of tacked on at the end. So I like to think of it sort of as baking an apple pie. When you want to make an apple pie, you don't just make a plain pie and then when it comes out of the oven, put an apple on top, right? You need to sort of bake in the apples into the pie from the beginning. And so sustainability needs to be sort of an integral part of the project from the outset. And so another aspect is there may be a partner which is tasked with responsibility for project sustainability. But again, this isn't the right way of thinking about it. So project sustainability needs to be baked in. It needs to be a shared responsibility amongst all the partners throughout the lifetime of the project. So you basically, the key takeaway of this slide is that project sustainability can't be outsourced. It can't be given to one person to sort of ensure that it gets done. It's something which needs to be thought about from the beginning and which all participants to the project need to take an active part in ensuring the project as a whole achieves sustainability. So very quickly, how do you achieve sustainability? Very quickly, it's in the simplest form, it's about meeting the needs of the end users. So it's been essentially it exists in the vector between the users and your project. So of course, I mean, it seems simple, but it's kind of a complex topic because users or the people who benefit from the output of your project are not a homogeneous monolithic entity. So users might be fragmented in different communities. They might have different sophistication level, different needs. So it's a kind of a complex issue, but the first step is realizing that in order for a project to be sustainable, it needs to provide value to a subset or a group or a community of users. So the first step is to think, who can benefit from the achievements of my project? Is it an academic community? Is it government policymakers? Is it the private sector, businesses? And so once you ask yourself these questions and you know who can derive value from the project, then you can begin to identify who the users are and tailor your project in such a way that you're maximizing the value generated for those users. Then we move on to the next step. And there's different ways of achieving this. You can do just a survey. So once you know who the end users are, you can reach out to them, ask them, what are their needs? What are their expectations? What are the pain points that your project can meet? So one way of achieving this is via, for example, a survey, amongst others. We move to the next sort of layer, and this is essentially implementing best practices into your project. So meeting end user requirements is a necessary principle, but it's not a sufficient one. In and of itself, that's not enough to ensure sustainability. You also need to ensure that your project is implementing industry recognized best practices. So this means you're making sure the project provides value, but you're doing so in, for example, a user-friendly way, or that the data you provide is accessible, easily accessible. So one way to achieve this is to look around for comparable projects or look at other initiatives in your field and basically learn what lessons have they learned, what challenges have they faced and overcome, and essentially learn these lessons and apply these best practices to your project. So you're building upon and improving on the efforts of others. And then finally, the final layer is to apply everything you've learned. So what are the user requirements you're meeting? What are the industry best practices? And then apply these to your specific project to operationalize these general practices into specific, concrete, actionable elements in your project. So this is quite vague, of course, but we'll try to make this a bit more concrete. So in our project, which is called NextGeos, we are working to develop a new online platform for Earth observation data. So we're building, we take data from satellites, we process the data, and then we serve this data to end user communities. And so in order to identify or study how we could deliver the most value to our specific end users, we conducted a survey of potential users of this Earth observation platform. And we asked them a series of questions to determine what they considered the most important needs or what their requirements were, which you see here on the left. So these are what our respondents, our users said, this is what their needs are. This is what they need to be met. And then we also asked them what their current pain points were, what the challenges that they faced with other platforms that exist on the market or that they use, which is on the right. So here we have what they struggle with, what the issues are, what the current supply of solutions isn't able to provide the challenges. And then what we did is we did a study where we sort of mixed the two, we analyzed the two. And the goal of our project is to maximize, to focus on this top tier and to maximize end user value by focusing at the same time in the most important service features, what they want to see, as well as solving the main challenges which they face today with the current solutions offered. So we move on to the next point, which is thinking about sustainability. So I think one of the major misconceptions is that the only way for a project to ensure sustainability is for the entire project as a whole to remain exactly as it is. So that your project needs to transition from receiving a grant or European Commission or government funding to a fully viable commercial funding model. And that's not really necessarily the case. So I think project sustainability should be thought about as sustainabilities instead. So a project has many different moving parts, is made up of different constitutive elements, different parts, moving pieces which work together. And these elements can be tangible. So, a new product, a new service, a new technology, which was developed throughout the course of your project. But you should sort of move a step further and think about potential intangible elements of your project. So for example, your project may have been able to create a network around it. It may have been able to build a community of users who were previously fragmented but are now linked. And this community, this network effect, can be valuable and can serve a function. So this is sort of an idea of an intangible asset of your project, which could potentially, that specific part could be sustainable, even if the rest of the project maybe isn't. Another example of this is sort of a lighthouse effect. So your project can sort of act to attract users or to serve a guiding function. So in essence, it's important to sort of think creatively when you think about project sustainability. And the ideal is that the entire project is preserved in its current state. This isn't always possible or feasible. And such, it's useful to break down the project into its different elements and consider each one in turn and think about, can a specific process developed in the project be preserved? Can a specific conclusion or technique or mechanism be used, reused, and essentially find a new home somewhere else? So to conclude, this is my last slide. I've written here a few sort of initial high-level takeaways. So it's difficult to generalize for all projects, which is why every project needs to sort of go through this exercise by itself. But I think at a minimum, these three basic concepts apply to many, if not the majority, of research projects. And this may sort of help guide your thinking. So the central question you should be asking yourself is, what problem is my project trying to solve for my users, right? And so these different aspects need to be thought about. Who are the users? What are their needs? What are their problems? How do I solve those problems? And this question needs to be asked over and over again at every stage of the project, and not only by one or two partners, but by all partners. So this question needs to be thought about, dissected, analyzed, and answered multiple times at different stages. And a big challenge is that the real value of your project to users needs to be demonstrated and proven. So who are the stakeholders of the product or the findings or the service or whatever project output, and how does this give them value? So then the next step is you can think about a niche. So a niche market should be identified, should be exploited. And then finally, the end users, whether it's community, whether it's a government, community, or academic or industry, needs to be identified and actively marketed to, right? And this is a lot of, maybe universities or research groups have difficulty marketing. But this marketing can come in many forms. There needs to be essentially a sort of a two-way engagement, a user engagement, which is continuous and not one-off. So a question you should ask yourself is, how much user feedback have I sought? How much have I listened to? And crucially, how much of this user feedback have I incorporated into my project and in my project development process? So have conversations with potential users changed what you do? And have your original plans evolved over time? This is how you know that your user engagement has been effective. If your initial proposal, the final product, may be different from the initial proposal because you've sought user reactions and feedback and you've implemented them in your project. So that's all I have on my side. I guess Bente, back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Simon. Here that sustainability of a project, it consists of many components and has a higher level of detail than at least I, for the first time when I hear about it, think. So please, can you ask questions if you have asked questions to Simon? And I encourage you to ask him. As you can tell, he has really been working on this and has a deep understanding of sustainability of a project. So while you are typing in a question, I will wait for that. I can ask Simon myself. So you mentioned that a project consists of many different components, and it could be a tangible and an intangible result, so to speak. Do you have any experience with how difficult it is for projects to identify this specific components of a project?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is a question. I think there's definitely an exercise of education which needs to be done, both for maybe the grant, the funding source, the evaluators of the project, but also within the project itself. People need to think that maybe they're used to it. This is they're sort of advanced researchers, and for them to take it for granted. But I mean, there needs to be more effort into communicating not only the final results, but also I think the processes that were used to achieve those results. And so this is why I think there needs to be an education process, but all participants to a project need to think about sustainability themselves. And this, with a little bit of guidance, this allows them to think critically about what they're working on, what they've achieved, and how this achievement can be useful, not only within their circle, within their colleagues or their user communities, but also there can be synergies with other users, maybe non-practitioners or in the industry. So it's difficult to pinpoint a specific thing because projects are so varied and so different. But it's important to sort of think critically about what you're doing, what you're achieving, and sort of separate different components. Even, again, like I said, things that can be intangible, and see, does this have value to someone? And if so, how so? And how can I communicate it? How can I preserve this?
Oh, thank you. I see that we haven't really a question yet for directly, but we might get that towards the end. So if you didn't have time to write your questions in the chat box, you still have a chance to do that because we will pick up again at the end of the webinar. Now, we will be presented for a couple of results or examples of how communities and networks have solved a problem with sustainability. And the first one is you, Thomas Mildorf. You are presenting a whole organization. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Just share my screen.
And then again, we will not disappear for real. We will just, our windows will disappear. And you went back.
Wrong button.
Oh,
All
yeah,
right.
wrong button, yes.
Thank you, Bente. So I will briefly introduce a sort of platform for sustainability of projects and how we deal with results of various EU projects and national projects in Plan for All. So I will go briefly through the history of setting up this this association and what was the supporting or creative elements in entering this association. So the first step we had was back in 2009 when we got funding for so-called Plan for All project. It was a new European network of best practices. It included, I think, 24 partners from all over Europe. And in this project, the idea to set up association, the Plan for All association arose. And the idea was to preserve the results, which included some data specifications on land use and so on. And we thought it's a pity to just throw them out or leave them in a drawer. In 2012, we got another funding for the Plan for Business project. It was an advancement of the previous project where the idea was developed. Eventually, it resulted in a business model where we had, let's say, two layers: the inner core part made of open data and the open data platform, which would be managed by Plan for All. And then we had, let's say, the second layer, some commercial exploitation platform based on open data plus some restricted data, private data. Eventually, we went only with the open data platform, which provides us enough background or enough material to make actually some business as well. And it's not only for us, for the founders or for the members, but also for other external communities. And you will see later on what I mean. In 2015, eventually Plan for All was founded. It was founded by 3 Czech organizations, and now it's been extended to the entire world. Plan for All is, as I already said, an association, is a non-profit association of legal entities. This includes also some self-employed natural persons. And there is the mission of Plan for All is to sustain and further enhance results from previous projects. It also does its role in managing large open data sets. I will mention them later on. It aims to transfer knowledge from those research results so they don't end up in a drawer, as I mentioned. They are used by practitioners. So we tend to transfer the results into practice. As many of our members are from the private sector, there are SMEs, there are NGOs, companies that are able to do the marketing, as Simon said, that might be quite difficult for universities or other, let's say, public bodies. So transfer of knowledge into practice is a key element. So currently the Plan for All network has got 48 members from 20 countries all over the world. Here you can see the map of Europe and the coverage inside Europe. On the website, there's a link. You can see all the 48 members. In last 3 years, from 2015 until 2017, the association was supported by 3 projects, including SDI for Apps, Foodie, and Open Transport Net. The support was mainly by providing data that were eventually end up in Plan for All, 3 large open data sets I will mention on the next slide. And also all the results that are publicly available are now part of Plan for All. These are the data sets I mentioned briefly. So we are managing 3 large open data sets. It's Open Land Use Map, Smart Points of Interest, and Open Transport Map. You can go through the links and find out more details, but briefly, the land use map is based on Korean land cover and urban atlas, and we get more detailed sources from some national, regional, or local sources. So, for example, the Czech Republic is covered by data coming from cadastre, so very high detailed data. Other parts of Europe might be of coarser data. Smart Points of Interest is the biggest open database of harmonized points of interest in the world. And Open Transport Map is a transport map for navigation, for routing, and it's based on OpenStreetMap, but it includes some additional features such as visualization of traffic. And currently, from 2017 until 2020, there are 2 projects which are supporting Plan for All. It's DataBio and NextGeos. And also we have 3 ongoing projects. So in the Plan for All Association, we have 3 H2020 projects currently executing. It's the EUSDAT project focused on precision farming, Polyvisu focused on policy development, especially in the transport domain, and EO for Agri, which will start in November this year, again focused on precision farming. This is my last slide, and this is just an invitation for everyone who is interested to join and who would like to know more and get involved in the activities that we do. So this is a call for members. So if you would like to become a member, please go through the constitution of Plan for All and see if you would be interested. Go through the website where you can see some references, links to the open data, all the members, and all the activities in news we do, and that Bente will also introduce after me about the Inspire Hackathons. So thank you very much. This is all from my side.
Thank you very much, Thomas. That is quite some achievement to have a whole organization to absorb or take care of the results of 3 projects. Please go ahead and again ask questions in the chat box to Thomas if you have questions for him. If you need some more time to think, you can ask after me and also after the next presentation. But Thomas, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Can you unshare your screen again, please? So,
sure.
And so we all get back.
Yeah.
So you had 3 data sets, obviously, that was produced in 3 different projects, was it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Do Plan for All have capacity to take care of new data sets, more data sets from other projects?
Well, that's a good question. Of course, we would welcome other data sets. The only challenge with data sets is their update. So keeping the data sets up to date is a time-consuming thing. At least these days, when data are coming from different sources and you need to harmonize each source to be, let's say, to have a one seamless layer all over Europe or globally. So keeping it up to date is a challenge. However, we are open for any other data sets that can be incorporated in the portal.
Yes, the reason why I ask is that in many cases, in situ data for sure is one of the types of data that might be challenging to find a home for, a repository for, exactly for the same reasons as you said. But we do have, this is the next question, we do have other data hubs and portals. How do you link to them? For instance, the Global Earth Observing System of System, GEOS. Is the data available through their portal?
Well, yeah. So every data set should have its metadata, so data about data. And so what we do, we try to find some common metadata schema, so description of the data which are common for all the data sets, and then we share them between each other, let's say between all the portals that comply with this metadata profile. So it's like in a library, if you can access through internet different libraries in one system, then usually the metadata of each book is somehow harmonized, and you can seamlessly, let's say, browse through different libraries in the world. Right. So similarly, it's done in this domain.
So an APIs type of connectivity.
Yes, those are specific protocols or specifications of data exchange. So it's machine to machine, basically automated harvesting of data or metadata.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. We will come back to you with more questions afterwards. I know I have some more. And then it's my turn. I will present one of the activities that is being led by Plan for All, where I'm also involved. Simon, I will ask you to help me share the presentation. For technical reasons, I'm asking Simon to do that for me. So Simon, go ahead. Thank you. So I will turn off my camera. So yes, the Inspire Hackathon, it's a type of activity. So Thomas was talking about a type of an organization. I will talk about an activity called the Inspire Hackathon. And I wear several hats. As you see, NextGeos was mentioned by Simon already, and Plan for All by Thomas, and I'm involved in both, and this work is a part of both of these activities, in addition to my own SME. So the next one, what I will talk very briefly about is I will explain what is the Inspire Hackathon and how it does contribute to sustainability, and a few examples of results, so you get an idea of that. Next one. So an Inspire Hackathon is not an event, it is a process. And Karel Harvat, one of the co-founders who couldn't be here today, is the one who repeatedly says this, and it is actually truth. The next one. So that means, what more specifically does it mean? The Inspire Hackathon is a series of collaborative events, and it's for developers, researchers, designers, and others that are interested in open data, volunteer geographical information, and citizens observatories. So it's the concept of a hackathon. You might have an idea of it's a young kid hacking into a computer, or at least young students. In this case, this is for I like to say, the the seasoned expert of all ages. It could be a young woman or a very grown-up man. As long as they are having some sort of skill, some advanced skill, I would say, this is for them. The next one. Simon? Yes, thank you. It is driven also by these experts that very often come from Horizon 2020 projects, and they have a common goal. They want to make sustained use of results based on Copernicus, the European Earth Observation Program, INSPIRE, and GEOS. So please note that it's not only INSPIRE itself, the INSPIRE directive, which we are borrowing the name from. The common thread, though, for all these three main organizations or activities is that they want to work on interoperability. So that is the common ground, and we are accommodating sustainability for across several activities, not only INSPIRE. And you see here a whole bunch of logos, a logo soup. And those are the different Horizon 2020 projects. And as you see, also some international organizations such as OGC, the Open Geospatial Consortium, and GODAN, the Global Open Data for Agriculture and Nutrition. And we also have with us a couple of the big European data portals. So it has grown into a very large community. Next one, please. So how do we actually contribute to sustainability, to project sustainability? So we provide some continuity in between the different activities. And here you see a row of the hackathons that we have already organized. This started in 2016, where we focused on volunteer geographical informations and citizens observatories, and it was a on-site or face-to-face event during the INSPIRE conference. The INSPIRE conference is an annual event. In 2017, we had a combination. We started to have a combination of virtual hacking with a face-to-face, and that is the format of today. In between, we have something called the Satellite INSPIRE Hackathon, in order to provide, to facilitate the continuity. So people working on something and achieving a result in the hackathon, in one of the annual hackathon, they can continue to work in satellite hackathons so that they don't have to wait a whole year. And indeed, we see that there is a transfer of the result from one hackathon team continuing to work together and even recombine. So it's a totally open for everybody at all times. So if you find a topic, a team in INSPIRE Hackathon, you will be welcome. It will be possible for you to join this team and be part of this process. I can give some examples on the Orléans OGC INSPIRE Hackathon in March 2018. The topic was metadata and standards. So that's another thing. We focus on different aspects of interoperability, say, and work focused on that topic. And this year we had the last event we organized was the Antwerp INSPIRE Hackathon in September, and the topic there was APIs. So you can see that some of the results are being brought into an INSPIRE Hackathon. It's open for everybody, so it's a chance also to work across different projects. So like Simon said, that there are different parts of your project that might be reused together with others. And you don't have to make your project sustainable in one whole as an entity. You can take bits and parts of it. And this is what the INSPIRE Hackathon partly is facilitating. The next one, please. So some of the results that we have so far, just to give you an example. Next one. So we have a component in XGEOS which has been already when we started the NextGeos project, it was a result of several other, not Horizon 2020, it was a Framework 7 and maybe even 6, I don't remember, but the user feedback system mechanism was developed, and it was continued to be developed through several hackathons and implemented thus in several other Horizon 2020 projects. So that's one example of how you can use the hackathon activity to make your results sustainable. Another, yes, and then just one more, the combination, you can also combine a project that are currently working, are running, like we did with the Interus, Data Bio, and NextGeos projects. We combined Earth observation data with statistics and big data. So you can use the hackathon. It's sort of creating a working space which is neutral. You can use the resources you have, and then in that way secure that that the results will be sustainable beyond the project. Thank you. Next one. So just to put a face on the people, it's all about the people working together. And here you see the winners of this year, the last hackathon. They are representing the projects behind them, but not only. They are members of Plan for All as well. And this year we had a general winner, and we also had a special prize for security. So we can use, and we are using the hackathon concept, the Inspire Hackathon concept in several ways, and it's very flexible. And I believe that was it. Next one. Yes. Thank you so much. You can follow us, learn more about this hackathon and Plan for All through these 3 Twitter accounts. Planet By, that's myself. Al Plan 4, All Plan 4, that's Plan for All, and the NextGeos. Thank you very much. Thank you, Simon. So that was it. We have through the project, the agenda. Is there any question for us? I didn't see. Let me see. Don't be shy. Ask questions to us now. This webinar will be a replay, so you will be given the opportunity to ask in comments, for instance, on YouTube, and we will share it obviously in Twitter and social media and on the platforms that we represent. But any questions? No, not yet. Thank you, Anna, for the nice feedback. I'm glad you found that interesting. I noticed that you are not only currently in a project, but you are also planning the next project. And Simon, I can then ask you, what would you recommend? Do you have a recommendation for how to plan for this even at the start of a project?
Well, that's a difficult question. I think, especially in the process, I think Tomáš is right that a lot of the Commission certainly, and also other funders, are requesting more and more to have a plan for sustainability at the outset, which is definitely a challenge because it's an early stage. It sort of runs against some of the advice, which I think the literature points out, which is to have feedback with the users and to evolve the project. And sometimes the project is fixed by the proposal, and it's difficult to deviate, or you need to justify why you deviate. So there definitely are issues, and it's kind of a fine line to walk. But I think it's a useful exercise, even though it's challenging, to think about the future of the project at such an early stage. It already gets you thinking. I think the Commission understands that it's impossible to predict the future and know how it's going to evolve. But if you can if you can use a little bit what we talked about, think creatively about your project, breaking down the different parts of the project, identifying where the most utility is, identifying who the users are, how you provide value. By thinking these through and putting thoughts down to paper, I think elements to fill the sustainability section will pop out at you, and you can think of who the end community is, what are their needs, what are their challenges, how does this project meet those needs or solve those challenges. and then think of a plan as to how the project can sustain itself, whether it's by connecting, as Bente said, with other associations or initiatives, and sort of share results that way. There's no sort of one size fits all template, which is the challenge. But I think via thinking things through, hiring dedicated firms, not to plug anyone or do any self-promotion, but there are people who think about these, who do market assessment, who forecasts, and they can help you identify the value, but more importantly, quantify the value. And that goes a long way to ensuring or to proving that there's a case to be made for the sustainability of your project, or at the very least to demonstrate that there's a plan, that there's somebody who's thinking about it, that it's something being taken seriously, and it might evolve, it might change, but that from the outset, it's something taken very seriously and thought about from an early stage.
Absolutely. Sounds very good. But Thomas, you actually went through this. How did the idea of the association come up during the project time? Your mic.
As I mentioned during my presentation, it arose during the Plan for All project, and the key things, I think the key trigger was that we were thinking of either setting up a company that will take care of the portal or some sort of platform, and the association and NGO and that it's association of legal entities came up later on based on our experience learning by doing, because we didn't want eventually to combine, let's say, some business activities or commercial data with open data, because people would be a bit afraid because you are not open, let's say, fully. So we just stick with open data, and we left the commercial private data to so let's say some other entities which might be members of Plan for All, but we are not maintaining the private data.
So you found actually a niche. Through the process, you found your niche type of organization. So that's something that came up through the process, as you said.
Yes.
Anything else then? I know that you probably have to go very soon, Thomas. So anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's we take the approach in Plan for All, learning by doing. And it took us a few years to, let's say, set up the association. And after, let's say, 3 years of running the association, we have some European projects, so some more funding to sustain the results and enhance them and continue. So it's sometimes a long-term process, but eventually, if you just go for your aim, it sometimes works.
Yes, it's to me. I know, of course, Plan for All a little bit. Is that you actually started with, you had something to start with, and then that's a good, money breeds money, but in this case, project results breed more project results. And and you learn along the way. This is definitely my experience with the hackathon, which you also are a big part of. Of course, you co-organize these, and the concept of the hackathon, even though the main idea, as Carol says, it's a process and not an event. It's steadily evolving, and that's it, exactly in line with what Simon is saying, that you need to be open to absorb the input and environment. The environment around you, it's constantly changing and very fast. So I will see. I will read. I got some comments here from Marie-Françoise. Thank you very much, Marie-Françoise. She's saying that she thinks it's great what you're saying, Simon, that to ask the users, to ask constantly the users and what they do. She has seen so many projects where someone was taking, instead of the users thinking, they think they know the users instead of actually asking them. And you need to onboard these people in charge of doing this to avoid this pitfall, she underlines. So thank you for that, Marie-Françoise. And like you said, the hackathon process allows continuous progress in agile approach and a capacity building. Yes, I didn't mention that. Thank you, Marie-Françoise, to point that out. So we do a lot of capacity building, which is also helping for sustainability, of course. So we are training users and the communities around us to use the results, which is also, contributing to sustainability. Yes, thank you so much, Thomas. He needed to go. Thank you, everyone. Do you have some last comments, Simon, before we end this webinar?
No, I think the final thing I wanted to say is just sort of reiterate what Marie-Françoise was saying in the comments, that it is important to ask people, to ask end users, and it's not a very daunting thing. I think people are actually very open to sharing their thoughts. They enjoy talking about their experiences, their challenges. They feel like they're being listened to. So it's not very difficult to actually ask people and to see who the most challenging thing is identify who the end users are, maybe track them down. But this can be done via conferences, via hackathons. There's a lot of different ways you can meet people and ask them. I think it's important to think ahead of time what sort of questions you want to ask them, to be prepared to ask the right questions to get the right data. Because people will have the answers, but they may not necessarily be thinking about it the right way or in that way. So, but if you go unprepared, you're open to it, you're open to listen, people are very, very willing to share and to talk and to share their experiences.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think we say stop there. This will, as I say, be a replay. So please do be engage with us and share your experiences with us. I think we are a large community in Europe, for sure, that share the same challenges, and we can help each other. So thank you very much to you who attended this webinar, and thank you so much to the speakers. And until the next time, ciao, ciao.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.